All right, so we've got a play-by-play summary here
Okay.
of the first day of
Yeah.
a test match, Australia versus Sri Lanka.
All right.
And I mean, just glancing at it, it looks like Australia really had a good first day.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we're going to unpack all of that
Okay.
and really see how it unfolded almost ball by ball.
Sounds good.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty,
Yep.
I'd love to hear your thoughts just kind of broadly
Sure.
on this match.
Okay.
What should we be paying close attention to?
Well, I think in a match summary like this, you get to see like the whole story unfold.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Okay.
like reading a detective novel and sort of like analyzing like all the strategies and the turning points and the individual brilliance that ultimately leads to the final score.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the beauty of a match summary.
Yeah.
And I think this particular match is interesting because it really showcases a dominant Australian performance.
And also like multiple centuries were scored, which is a big deal in Test cricket.
Yeah. So let's set the stage for our listener.
Yeah.
How did this match actually play out?
So Australia absolutely dominated the first day of this Test match.
Okay.
They really put on a clinic.
Yeah.
And they ended the day with a commanding lead,
Okay.
thanks to some, I mean, as you alluded to,
Yeah.
some incredible batting performances.
Yeah. Speaking of incredible batting,
Yeah,
right off the bat, we see Usman Khawaja smashing a century,
absolutely.
his 16th in Test matches.
Yep, that's right.
Now, for those who might not be as familiar with cricket,
Yeah,
can you explain what makes reaching a century such a significant achievement?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So a century in Test cricket is a grueling feat
Okay.
of concentration, stamina, and skill.
Right.
Imagine batting for hours under intense pressure, constantly adapting to different bowlers and field placements.
Well, oh, wow. Yeah.
So to reach 100 runs in that environment,
Yeah.
it's a testament to a batsman's talent and mental toughness. Right.
It's a really big deal.
Yeah, and this summary describes him reaching the century in 48.3 overs.
Yep.
And it sounds like it was a pretty emotional moment for him.
Yeah.
Can you paint a picture of what that might have felt like for him?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, the tension builds with every run as he approaches that milestone.
Right.
Right. And then finally he hits that boundary that brings him to 100.
Yeah.
The release of pressure must be immense.
Yeah.
The crowd erupts. His helmet comes off.
Uh-huh.
His bat goes up in the air.
Yeah.
And there's that celebratory hug with Steve Smith.
Yeah.
It's a shared moment of pure elation.
Right.
And a testament to their teamwork.
Yeah, you can't talk about this match without talking about Steve Smith, right?
No, absolutely not.
The guy scores his 35th Test century,
It's remarkable.
and it almost sounds like it was a walk in the park for him.
He makes it look easy, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, 77.2 overs to reach his century. But he did it with such confidence and control.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the fact that he celebrated
Yeah.
with a hug with Khawaja,
Uh-huh.
I think that speaks volumes about their partnership and the camaraderie within the Australian team.
77 overs is a long time to be out there.
Yeah.
What makes Smith such a dominant batsman?
That's a great question.
Is it pure talent, or is there something more to it?
It's definitely not just talent.
Okay.
It's his unique technique
Okay.
and his incredible mental game.
Okay.
So his technique is often described as unorthodox.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And, to the untrained eye, it might even look a little awkward.
Right.
But it's incredibly effective.
Okay.
His unusual stance and backlift allow him to access a wider range of shots than most batsmen and keeps the bowlers constantly guessing.
So it's almost like he's playing mind games with the bowlers.
Yeah, exactly.
Disrupting their rhythm.
Exactly. He's constantly keeping them off balance.
Yeah.
But his mental strength is just as important.
Okay.
He's known for his ability to concentrate intensely for long periods
Yeah.
and stay calm under immense pressure.
Okay.
That kind of focus is crucial in a game as long and demanding as Test cricket.
All right, let's move on to Travis Head.
Okay.
His innings seem to have a very different energy to it.
Yes, Head's innings was a complete explosion of runs.
Yeah.
He blasted 50 runs in just 35 balls.
Wow.
That's the kind of batting that can shift the momentum of an entire match.
Yeah.
It's high-risk, high-reward cricket at its finest.
He reached 50 in only 11.5 overs.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm guessing that sort of aggressive play style has its downsides too?
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
That live by the sword, die by the sword attitude
Right.
is part of what makes him such an exciting player to watch.
Uh-huh.
but it also means that he's more prone to getting dismissed early.
Okay.
And in this match, he was eventually dismissed after facing only 14.3 overs.
So we've talked about some standout performances, but were there any specific moments in the match that really stand out to you? Those moments that could have swung the game in a different direction.
Well, early on, there was a drop catch
Okay.
when Smith was batting in the 8th over.
Okay.
It was a tough chance, but if the fielder had managed to hold on,
Yeah.
Smith's innings could have been cut short very early.
Right.
And, those missed opportunities can haunt a team.
Yeah, it's amazing how a single moment like that
Yeah.
can have such a ripple effect on
Yeah.
the entire game.
Absolutely.
Anything else that could have changed the course of the day?
Absolutely. In the 39th over,
Okay.
there was a very close review that went in Australia's favor.
Okay.
It could have easily gone the other way
Uh-huh.
and shifted the momentum.
Right.
These are the tiny details that make test matches so unpredictable.
Cricket is a game of inches, isn't it?
It really is.
Were there any other turning points we should highlight for our listener?
Definitely. Just before lunch, Sri Lanka managed to break through
Okay.
and take a crucial wicket, dismissing Labuschagne in the 30th over.
Okay.
It was a much-needed win for them,
Okay.
as it stopped the flow of runs and gave them a chance to regroup.
It sounds like Australia really had the upper hand for most of the day.
They did.
But those little victories
Yeah.
for Sri Lanka must have felt pretty important.
Absolutely vital for Sri Lanka's morale.
Okay.
Test matches are long, grueling affairs.
Yeah.
And even small wins
Yeah.
can provide a psychological boost and keep a team fighting.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
But I want to kind of dig deeper into
Right.
some of the more nuanced aspects of the game.
Sounds good.
What about partnerships?
Yeah.
The summary mentions a 150-run stand
Yeah.
between Smith and Khawaja.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
That's
runs.
huge.
Yeah.
A 150-run partnership is a huge accomplishment in Test cricket.
Okay.
It shows not only individual skill, but also a deep understanding between the batsmen.
Okay.
They support each other, they rotated the strike effectively, and built a formidable total for Australia.
Wow.
And I believe that partnership took place over 70.2 overs,
Right.
which put tremendous pressure on the Sri Lankan bowlers.
It's fascinating how those partnerships can completely change the dynamic of a match.
Oh, absolutely.
Were there any other noteworthy partnerships?
There was also a quicker 50-run partnership that unfolded
Right.
over just 40 overs.
Okay.
This likely involved more aggressive batting
Yeah.
and risk-taking
Uh-huh.
to accelerate the scoring rate.
Okay.
Each partnership brings its own unique flavor to the match.
Yeah.
And it's these different approaches that keep things interesting.
You've given us so much to think about already.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I'd love to hear more about the importance of shot selection in cricket.
Sure.
The summary mentions a few impressive shots, like
Yeah.
Khawaja's reverse sweeps Yeah. and Smith's 6 straight down the ground.
Great shots.
Why are these shots so significant?
So I think every shot in cricket is a calculated risk. The batsman has to consider the bowler's delivery,
Right.
the field placement,
Right.
and their own strengths to choose the optimal shot.
Right.
So Khawaja's reverse sweeps,
Mm-hmm.
I believe those took place in the 41st and 80th over,
Okay.
demonstrate his versatility and ability to manipulate the field.
For those who aren't as familiar with cricket,
Sure.
can you explain what a reverse sweep is?
Yeah.
And why it's so impressive?
So it's a shot where the batsman switches their hand position on the bat
Okay.
and aims to hit the ball in the opposite direction to what's expected.
Okay.
It requires a lot of skill and timing
Yeah.
because you're essentially hitting the ball blind.
Wow.
So Khawaja's reverse sweeps were a clear signal
Mhm.
to the Sri Lankan team that he wasn't afraid to take risks
Right.
and challenge their bowling strategy.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What about Smith's 6?
Yeah.
That must have been something to see.
It was a pure display of power and timing.
Okay.
Hitting a 6 takes a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And for him to execute it so flawlessly, especially against a team like Sri Lanka,
Right.
it shows you just how dominant he was feeling at the crease.
It sounds like Australia was firing on all cylinders that day.
But they were in his zone.
Yeah. Are there any other shots that come to mind?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't forget about Hid's powerful sweep shot
Okay.
in the 8th over.
Okay.
It was a textbook example of how to play an aggressive attacking shot.
Yeah.
And I think these specific shots
Mm-hmm.
are just a glimpse into the artistry and strategy involved in batting.
Right.
It's not just about hitting the ball as hard as you can.
Right.
It's about precision, timing, and placement.
It sounds like a delicate balance
It is,
between power and finesse.
for sure.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I'd love to get your final thoughts on what these different batting styles tell us
Yeah.
about the Australian team as a whole.
You know, it's fascinating how Australia showcased a blend of contrasting batting styles in this match.
Huh.
You know, you have Khawaja's steady, determined accumulation of runs.
Right.
You have Smith's unorthodox brilliance.
Right.
And Head's explosive risk-taking approach.
Right.
They all contributed to Australia's success
Yeah.
in very different ways.
Yeah.
And this speaks volumes about the depth and versatility of their batting lineup.
So it's not just about individual talent, but how those individual styles work together
Exactly.
as a cohesive unit.
Exactly. A well-balanced team
Yeah.
needs a mix of these approaches to navigate different game situations
All right.
and keep the opposing team guessing.
Uh-huh.
And what we saw from Australia today was a masterclass in that very concept.
Okay. Yeah.
But, you know, it's important to remember that this is just one day
Yeah.
in a 5-day test match.
Right. A lot can happen.
Exactly.
So much cricket left to play.
Exactly.
We've unpacked the Australian side of the game pretty thoroughly.
We have.
But I'm curious to hear your perspective on the Sri Lankan team.
Sure.
What challenges did they face on this first day?
I mean, it was a tough day for the Sri Lankans, no doubt.
Yeah.
They struggled to contain the Australian batsmen
Right.
and had to work really hard for every wicket.
What are some of the specific challenges a bowling team faces when up against a batting lineup as strong as Australia's?
Well, maintaining consistency and accuracy is crucial. When you're bowling against batsmen like Smith and Khawaja,
Right.
any slight error in line or length can be punished severely. And we saw that with Smith's 6, for example.
Yeah.
He capitalized on a delivery that wasn't quite where it needed to be.
So it's a constant mental battle for the bowlers as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's about staying focused under pressure,
Right.
adapting to the batsman's strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
and trying to create opportunities for wickets.
We've talked a lot about the individual performances and key moments of this first day.
We have.
But let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture.
Sure.
What does this dominant Australian performance tell us about the relative strengths of these two teams? Where do we go from here?
Well, it's early days in the series,
Right.
but this first day definitely gives us some clues.
Okay.
Australia clearly came into this match well prepared and with a clear strategy. They executed their game plan flawlessly
Yeah.
and really put Sri Lanka on the back foot right from the start.
What are some things Sri Lanka might do to try and turn things around
Yeah.
in the remaining days of this match?
Well, they'll need to regroup
Okay.
and come up with a plan to disrupt Australia's momentum.
Okay.
Perhaps they'll try some different bowling combinations
Right.
or experiment with some unconventional field placements
Okay.
to try and put the Australian batsmen under pressure.
So it's not just about reacting to Australia's plays,
Right.
but also trying to anticipate
Yeah.
what they might do next.
Be proactive.
Okay.
Sri Lanka needs to be proactive
Right.
and force Australia to adapt to their strategies. They also need to capitalize on any opportunities that come their way,
Yeah.
like that drop catch we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Those missed chances can be costly.
Absolutely.
Speaking of costly, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the psychological aspect of Test cricket.
Okay.
How does a day like this,
Yeah.
where one team is clearly dominating,
Right.
affect the mindset of both teams?
Momentum is huge in cricket.
Okay.
Australia will be riding high on confidence
Yeah.
after their performance today.
Right.
They'll be feeling positive, energized, and ready to build on their lead.
Okay.
On the other hand, Sri Lanka
Yeah.
will need to dig deep
Right.
and find a way to stay motivated despite the setback.
It sounds like mental toughness
Oh, yeah.
is just as important as physical skill in a game like this.
Without a doubt.
Right.
Test cricket is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
It tests a team's resilience,
Yeah.
their ability to bounce back from adversity,
Okay.
and their capacity to maintain focus for long periods.
So how does a team like Sri Lanka even begin to rebuild that mental strength
Yeah.
after a tough day on the field?
It starts with leadership.
Okay.
Experienced players, like their captain,
Right.
will need to rally the troops, encourage a positive mindset,
Yeah.
and help the team refocus on the challenges ahead.
So it's not just about strategizing for the next day. It's
Right.
about managing emotions
Yeah.
and keeping morale up.
For sure.
That's a great segue to our next topic,
Okay.
learning from mistakes.
Yeah.
The commentary mentions a few strategic decisions,
Yeah.
like the dropped catch,
Yeah.
the close review that went Australia's way,
Yeah.
and the timing of that crucial wicket just before lunch.
Right.
If you were coaching the Sri Lankan team,
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways you'd focus on
Oh, that's a good question.
from this first day?
First and foremost, I'd emphasize the importance of taking those crucial catches.
Okay.
A dropped catch can completely shift the momentum of a match. And in this case, it could have made a big difference for Sri Lanka.
Right.
It's about staying focused, trusting your instincts, and executing those key moments flawlessly.
So sharpening those fielding skills is a top priority.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it's not just about the physical act of catching the ball.
Right.
It's about communication between fielders, anticipation,
Right.
and reading the batsman's intentions.
Okay.
Those elements all come into play when it comes to creating those game-changing moments in the field.
You mentioned that the close review also went Australia's way.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a turning point in the match?
It was definitely a pivotal moment to ensure they're using it effectively in those crucial moments.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then there was that crucial wicket they took just before lunch.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the timing of that dismissal?
Taking a wicket just before a break
Uh-huh.
is always a psychological boost for the bowling team.
Okay.
It gives them something positive to carry into the break
Right.
and allows them to regroup
Yeah.
and come back with renewed energy.
Okay.
Sri Lanka will need to find ways to replicate those kinds of breakthroughs
Right.
if they want to claw their way back into this match.
It's interesting how those small victories
Yeah.
can have such a big impact on
This-
the overall flow of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's zoom in on a specific aspect of the Sri Lankan bowling attack.
Okay.
What did you notice about their bowling strategies? Did
Yeah.
anything stand out to you?
They struggled to find a consistent line and length,
Okay.
which allowed the Australian batsmen to score freely. They also seemed to lack variation in their bowling attack.
Okay.
They relied heavily on pace bowling
Right.
and didn't utilize spin bowling as effectively as they could have.
For those who might not be as familiar with the nuances of cricket,
Okay.
can you explain the difference between case bowling and spin bowling
Sure.
and why that variety is important?
Of course.
Yeah.
So pace bowling is all about raw speed
Okay.
and trying to bounce the ball off the pitch at a high velocity
Uh-huh.
to make it difficult for the batsman to hit.
Right.
Spin bowling, on the other hand,
Okay.
relies on deception and using the spin of the ball
Right.
to make it curve or bounce unpredictably.
Okay.
Having a mix of both pace and spin bowlers
Yeah.
allows a team to adapt to different pitch conditions
Right.
and target the weaknesses of different batsmen.
So Sri Lanka might have benefited from introducing a spin bowler earlier in the day
Possibly, yeah.
to disrupt the rhythm of the Australian batsmen.
It's certainly a possibility.
Right.
A good spin bowler can be a real asset,
Right.
especially on a pitch that offers some turn.
Okay.
It's about having the right tools for the job
Uh-huh.
and using them strategically.
We've talked a lot about batting and bowling,
We have.
but I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the importance of fielding.
Oh, for sure.
What were your impressions of Sri Lanka's fielding performance?
Their fielding was generally tidy,
Okay.
but they missed a few crucial opportunities,
Right.
including that dropped catch when Smith was batting.
Yeah.
Fielding is often overlooked,
Right.
but it's a vital aspect of cricket,
Uh,
especially in test matches where every run counts.
Yeah. What are some of the key qualities of a strong fielding team?
Agility, anticipation, and good communication are essential.
Okay.
Fielders need to be able to move quickly,
Right.
read the batsman's shots,
Yeah.
and back each other up.
Okay.
A strong fielding team can save runs, build pressure on the batsman,
Right.
and create opportunities for wickets. Sri Lanka will need to tighten up their fielding if they want to compete with a team like Australia.
It sounds like Sri Lanka has a lot to work on if they want to bounce back in this series.
It does sound that way.
But let's not forget that test matches are played over 5 days.
Right.
And there's still a lot of cricket left to be played.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
This first day is just a snapshot
Right.
of a much larger contest.
Yeah.
It's a marathon, not a sprint,
Exactly.
and we've only just begun.
We've dissected this first day pretty thoroughly.
We have.
But before we move on,
Okay.
I want to touch on one more thing.
Sure.
Test cricket can sometimes be seen as a bit slow-paced
Yeah,
compared to other formats of the game, like 2020 cricket.
right.
What would you say to someone who might be new to Test cricket
Yeah.
or who finds it a bit challenging to follow?
I'd say that Test cricket is a game of patience,
Okay. Yeah.
strategy,
Uh-huh.
and subtle nuances.
Okay.
It's like a chess match
Right.
where every move is calculated, and the outcome can hinge on the smallest details.
Yeah.
If you're new to the game, don't be afraid to ask questions
Okay.
and learn as you go.
Right.
There's a whole world of strategy and skill to uncover,
Yeah.
and it can be incredibly rewarding to follow the ebb and flow of a 5-day test match.
I love that analogy of a chess match.
Yeah,
It really captures the strategic depth of Test cricket.
absolutely.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
from individual performances to team strategies,
Yeah.
from the psychological aspects of the game to the
Yeah.
importance of those small but crucial moments that can swing the momentum.
Right.
I'm curious, from your perspective,
Here's your...
what's the most compelling aspect of this particular match?
Hi.
What's the one thing that really stands out to you?
It's the contrast in batting styles we've been discussing.
Okay.
You've got Khawaja's steady,
Right.
almost methodical approach,
Right?
building his innings brick by brick.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got Smith,
Yeah.
who's just a puzzle for bowlers
Right.
with his unorthodox technique, picking gaps in the field
Yeah.
like he has a sixth sense.
Yeah.
And then you bring in Head,
Right.
who's all about explosive power and taking risks.
Right.
So seeing how these different approaches play out
Yeah.
against Sri Lanka's bowling attack is fascinating.
It's like they have a batting style
Yeah.
for every occasion.
Absolutely.
You've got the reliable run builder,
Yeah.
the tactical genius, and the game changer.
That's a great way to put it.
What does this tell us about Australia's overall strategy
Yeah.
going into this test series?
It tells me they're prepared for anything.
Okay.
They have the flexibility to
Yeah.
adapt to different match situations,
Huh.
different pitch conditions,
Right.
different bowling attacks.
Okay.
They can play the long game with patience,
Mm-hmm.
or they can shift gears and attack
Right.
when the opportunity arises.
Okay.
That kind of versatility makes them a very dangerous opponent.
Yeah, it sounds like they've got all their bases covered.
They really do.
But cricket's a two-way street, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about Sri Lanka.
Okay.
What can they learn from this first day? What adjustments might they need to make
Yeah.
for the rest of the series?
They'll need to find a way to put more pressure
Okay.
on the Australian batsmen.
Uh-huh.
They were a bit too predictable in their bowling,
Right.
and they allow the Australian batsmen to get comfortable at the crease.
Okay.
They'll need to vary their pace, their line, and their length
Right.
to keep the batsmen guessing.
Okay.
And they can't afford to miss those crucial catching opportunities.
Right.
You know, those moments can be game changers.
So it's about being more proactive
Exactly.
and disruptive,
Yeah.
forcing Australia to work harder for their runs.
Right. Exactly. They need to make Australia uncomfortable,
Mm.
make them second guess themselves,
Right.
make them feel like they're constantly under pressure.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of Test cricket. I feel like I've learned so much just from analyzing this one day of play.
Yeah, me too.
It's amazing how much strategy and nuance goes
Yes.
into every decision,
Yeah.
every shot,
Every delivery.
every delivery.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
It's a game that rewards careful observation and analysis. There's always something new to discover,
Right.
even for seasoned fans.
Well, you've certainly opened my eyes to a whole new level of appreciation for Test cricket.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Any final thoughts for our listener before we wrap up?
Sure.
What should they keep in mind
Yeah.
as they continue to follow this series, or even just the sport in general?
I'd say pay attention to the little things.
Okay.
The subtle shifts in momentum,
Mm-hmm.
the individual battles
Right.
between batsmen and bowlers,
Yeah.
the strategic decisions made by the captains,
Okay.
the way the game ebbs and flows over 5 days.
Right.
Those details are what make Test cricket so captivating.
It's those details, those moments of brilliance,
Yeah.
and those strategic decisions that really paint the full picture of the game.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been my pleasure.
I think our listener is going to come away from this with a much richer understanding of Test cricket.
I hope so.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to explore the world of cricket even further.
Yeah.
Whether you're a seasoned fan or a curious newcomer,
Yep.
there's always something new to discover
Absolutely.
in this complex and fascinating game.
For sure.
Keep those cricket brains buzzing.